I never thought I'd be the guy writing this kind of story, but here I am. It's raw, it's painful, and honestly, I don't even know who I am anymore. Just a few weeks ago, I had everything figured out. I was about to marry my wife, Lisa. We'd been together for 5 years. I thought I knew her, knew us. We had plans, dreams, a future. Nothing obvious to suggest otherwise, or so I thought. The day I found out was like a punch to my gut. It was late at night and I was going through some papers on our kitchen table. Nothing special, just bills, receipts, a few love notes from her I kept for some reason. I'd been suspicious for a while about her recent behavior, shorter tempers, secretive phone calls, messages she'd quickly delete. I tried not to overthink, but my instincts didn't lie. That night, I finally decided to look at her phone. I just needed to see if there was anything. I unlocked it while she was in the bedroom, pretending to be asleep. The screen lit up, and there was a message from her boss, Mark. It wasn't the usual professional stuff. It was more personal, flirty, suggestive. I blinked hard, staring at that message. My stomach dropped. My hands went cold. I read it again, and my mind couldn't process what I was seeing. I needed proof, so I kept scrolling through her messages. That's when I saw the picture. It was her in bed, half-dressed, with Mark. It wasn't explicit, but enough to tell what it was. My heart hammered in my chest. My palms went slick. I felt 1,000 different emotions crashing through me: anger, betrayal, disbelief. How could she do this? Right before we were supposed to get married. How could she lie to my face every day? What made everything worse? I looked at the timestamp. It was from a week ago, the night before our wedding date. She'd been sneaking around, lying, and I had no idea. I remember the moment I saw the photo. The room spun a little. My vision blurred, and I could feel my jaw tighten, my fists clenched so hard my nails dug into my palms. I had the proof I needed, and the world suddenly felt like it was crumbling beneath me. I sat there, staring at her phone, feeling like I'd been punched in. The stomach, my mind raced. "She's been lying all this time," I whispered. "All those nights she said she was working late, the supposed business trips, it was all bullshit." My head pulsed with 1,000 questions I couldn't answer. Why her? Why Mark? And then the most devastating thought hit me. What I didn't know yet, what I'd find out in the coming days: that Mark isn't just her boss. He's my brother. That info hit me like a sledgehammer. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in the dark, trying to breathe. My skin felt hot, my chest tight. I could still feel her hands, her scent. Everything I thought was real shattered into pieces. That's when I knew this wasn't just about her cheating. It was about everything I'd trusted, everything I believed in. I had to plan my next move carefully. I also knew I couldn't confront her right away. Not yet. I had to gather everything, figure out what I was going to do. I couldn't just explode. I needed to be smart. I couldn't let her walk away, not after what she'd done. The idea of her lying with my brother, I could feel that burning rage boiling up inside me, but I pushed it down, focusing instead on the cold, calculated revenge I was about to set in motion. In the meantime, I remembered something she'd told me once in a moment of honesty. She said she loved me, but sometimes love isn't enough. She was right. Love isn't enough when trust is broken. I looked at her photo, the one she took when she thought she was alone, and I knew I had to do something. I didn't just want to hurt her, I wanted her to feel what I felt: stripped, raw, betrayed, and humiliated. That's when the plan started forming in my mind. I could feel the gears turning, sharp and precise. I was about to make her regret everything. But first I had to figure out how to keep her from knowing I was onto her. And most importantly, I needed to understand the full scope of her betrayal. My head buzzed with questions. How deep did it go? Were they still in contact? And most terrifying of all, was Mark really my brother? I had no idea how I was going to find out. All I knew was this was just the beginning. I spent the next few days in a fog. Every time I tried to think straight, all I could feel was this heavy, sinking weight in my chest. I'd never felt so betrayed in my life. The worst part, I kept going back to that photo, the one she thought was just a harmless selfie. It was. It was proof that she'd crossed a line I never imagined she would. And Mark, my brother, was somehow involved. I couldn't get that out of my head. I knew I needed to confront her, but I also knew I had to be strategic. If I did this wrong, I'd lose everything. So I started digging. I checked her phone again carefully. Her messages with Mark had been erased, but I knew that wasn't foolproof. I needed something concrete. I remembered a few days earlier, she'd left her email open on her laptop. I quietly snuck in and looked at her sent folder. Nothing suspicious there, but I noticed she'd been using a secret email account. I managed to hack into it using a bit of tech trickery. It wasn't difficult. I had some experience. What I found was worse than I expected. She'd been emailing Mark about their plans, talking about meetings, flights, and even private getaways. Nothing explicit, but enough to confirm it wasn't just a workplace affair. They'd been sneaking around, hiding it from everyone. I felt my stomach turn. My head swam with betrayal, and suddenly every moment I'd shared with her felt like a lie. The woman I loved was someone else entirely. And Mark, my brother, was not just a boss. He was part of it too. That realization made my blood run cold. I also discovered that she'd been planning to leave town with Mark once everything was settled. I clenched my fists so tightly my nails dug into my palms. I couldn't believe she'd planned to run with him just like that, leaving me behind. I stared at the screen, feeling this sharp, icy anger spread through me. It was a kind of betrayal that cut so deep it was almost physical. How could she? How could Mark? I felt the bile rising in my throat. That night I sat alone in the dark again, my mind racing. I wasn't just angry, I was furious. The kind of fury that makes your limbs tremble. I knew I had to do something. But what? I wasn't going to let her get away with this. I had to make her pay in a way that hit where it hurt. I thought about confronting her immediately, yelling, accusing, breaking down her walls, but I knew that wouldn't be enough. Not yet. Instead, I started laying my trap. I needed proof of their plans, something undeniable. I reached out to a private investigator I knew, someone discreet who could follow her without raising suspicion. I gave him all the info I'd uncovered, her secret email, the secret meetings, the plans to leave town. I told him to find out everything, especially about Mark's involvement, if he was truly my brother or just another guy she'd been playing. I didn't trust anyone anymore, but I was out of options. Meanwhile, I also gathered a few personal items of hers, things she kept close, stuff that had her scent on it. I wanted her to know I was close, watching her every move. I kept my cool around her, acting as if nothing was wrong, but inside I was boiling. Every word she said, every glance she threw my way felt like a punch in the gut. She was so good at hiding her lies, but I knew the truth now, and I was determined to expose her. One thing I couldn't shake was the feeling that I was walking on a razor's edge. One wrong move and everything could blow up in my face. I had to be careful, but I also knew I wouldn't let her walk out of this without paying. The betrayal ran too deep. I could feel my jaw clench whenever I thought about Mark, my brother, being involved. That's what made my plan all the more personal. I wanted her to feel the same loss, the same shame. I wanted this to be a lesson she wouldn't forget, so I waited. I kept my eyes open, listening for any sign of her crossing the line again. I didn't know what her next move would be, but I was ready. The pieces were falling into place. I had the evidence, I had the plan, and I knew the moment to strike was coming closer. I didn't want to make this about revenge alone. I wanted her to see what she'd thrown away, to understand the damage she'd caused. I just had to be patient, and when the time came, I'd make sure she paid for it. The days dragged on, and with each passing hour the tension mounted. I felt like I was walking on a thin wire stretched tight across a chasm of betrayal. My mind kept circling around that one terrible truth: Mark, my brother, was involved. I couldn't sleep properly anymore. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, then that photo, then his. My stomach clenched so hard I thought I might throw up. I finally got the call I was waiting for. The investigator had followed her, tracked her flights, and uncovered more than I'd hoped. She was planning to leave the city with Mark in less than a week. It was just as I suspected. They were ready to run. I felt that icy rage boiling again, stronger this time. I knew I had to act fast. No more waiting. No more hesitation. I decided it was time for the confrontation, but not the kind she'd expect. I wanted her to think I was still unaware, still naive. I needed to catch her off guard, get her to slip so I could have irrefutable proof of everything. I played the part of the calm, betrayed husband when I saw her that evening, sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She looked up as I entered, her eyes flickering with a flicker of guilt I was determined to fan into a blaze. "Hey," she said, her voice a little too casual. "You're home early." "Yeah," I said, voice even. "Thought I'd surprise you. You seemed kinda tense lately. Something on your mind?" She hesitated, then shrugged. "Just work stuff. You know how it is." I nodded slowly, carefully. "Yeah, I've noticed you've been distant, and the phone, was there something you didn't want me to see?" She froze for a second, eyes darting, then quickly recovered. "It's nothing, just work emails, nothing to worry about." I reached into my pocket, pulling out the envelope I'd prepared earlier. Inside was the evidence, the photos, the messages, the email reports. I threw it on the coffee table. Her eyes widened slightly. "Now, Lisa," I said quietly, voice almost a whisper, "I know about Mark, I know everything." Her face drained of color. She looked like she'd been caught in a trap, cornered. Her mouth opened, then closed. She tried to speak but couldn't find the words. That's when I saw her eyes flick to her phone, her safe escape, her last line of defense. "I guess I should told you," she finally whispered, voice trembling. "It was a mistake. I didn't mean for you to find out this way." "You lied to me for months," I said, voice tight. "All those nights, all those promises, you were with him, weren't you?" She nodded, tears pooling in her eyes. "It was wrong. I never wanted to hurt you." That's when I decided to lay out my plan. I kept my voice steady, even though inside I felt like my heart was pounding out of my chest. "You've been planning to run with him, haven't you? Leaving town just like that?" She looked down, silent. I could feel the weight of her guilt pressing into the room like a thick fog. "I've got enough," I said, voice hardening. "Enough lies, enough betrayal. But I'm not just going to let this go, not without a lesson." Her eyes shot up, desperate. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I've been watching, listening. You're not going anywhere until we settle this. And Mark, I know he's more than just your boss. He's my brother. That's what I uncovered today." Her face twisted, shock and horror battling for control. "You're lying. That's not possible." "Oh, it's possible," I said, voice colder now. "And I have proof. I've got the emails, the flights, everything. You're not just sleeping with him. You're planning to leave town with him. And I'm going to make sure everyone knows what you've done." She burst into tears, then sinking into the couch. Her hands trembled, clutching her face. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt emptiness, hollowed out by betrayal. But I knew I had to stay strong. Her tears were just the beginning. She didn't realize I'd already set the gears in motion for what was coming next. Right then, I realized I'd have to be careful. I couldn't just walk out and blow everything up immediately. No, the plan had to be precise. I had to let her believe she was still in control, that she'd gotten away with it. Meanwhile, I'd be gathering every shred of evidence I could to make her pay. The next step was clear. I told her I needed some time to think, that I'd be back in a few hours. I went straight to my laptop and began drafting a detailed message. I knew exactly what I'd do. I'd call Mark, confront him face to face, and make sure he knew I was onto him. I'd make him understand that crossing me, that betraying a brother, my brother, was the biggest mistake he'd ever make. There was no turning back now. I could feel the adrenaline pounding in my veins. The revenge I'd dreamed about was starting to take shape, and I wasn't going to stop until I'd set the record straight. Every fiber of my body told me this was the only way to restore some kind of sense of justice, and I was ready to see it through. The plan was starting to take shape, and I could feel the momentum building inside me. I sat at my laptop, fingers flying over the keyboard, drafting a message to Mark that I knew would shake him to his core. I kept it cold, precise, no room for misinterpretation. I told him I knew everything about the affair, about the plans to leave, about the fact that he was my brother. I made sure he understood that I wasn't some broken-hearted fool, that I was angry, furious, and that I'd be watching him closely from now on. Once I hit send on that message, I knew I'd crossed a line. I could almost feel the shockwave rippling through him, whoever he really was. I didn't care about the consequences anymore. All I cared about was making him realize what he'd done, how deep the betrayal went. I wanted him to understand that this wasn't just about my wife cheating on me. It was about brotherhood, loyalty, trust, and he had shattered all of it. Meanwhile, I kept my face calm and neutral around Lisa. She was frantically trying to talk, crying and pleading, but I wasn't listening anymore. I had already made up my mind. I told her I'd be gone for a while, that I needed to clear my head. I left her sitting there, her face streaked with tears, and I headed straight to the coffee shop down the street. I needed to think, to breathe. I needed to plan the next move. The scent of dark roast filled my nose as I sat there, staring at the steaming mug in front of me. I felt the heat seep into my palms, grounding me just enough to focus. I kept replaying everything, the photos, the messages, her plan to run with Mark, and I knew I had to do something more. I wasn't just going to confront her and walk away. No, I needed her to feel the full weight of what she'd done. I pulled out my phone and started drafting a text. "We need to talk. Meet me in the park in an hour." I knew she'd come because she'd still think I was trying to save this, trying to reason with her. That's exactly what I wanted. I needed her vulnerable, desperate. That's when I'd finally get her to admit everything. When she arrived at the park, I saw her rushing toward me, her eyes red and swollen. She looked like a defeated child, but I wasn't feeling any pity. I just kept my face blank, waiting for her to speak first. She hesitated, then blurted out, "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I swear I love you." I stared at her, feeling the coldness in my chest. "Love," I repeated. "You were planning to leave me with my brother and you call that love?" She looked down, trembling. "It was a mistake. I didn't think you'd find out. It was a moment of weakness." "Moments of weakness don't make plans to run away with someone," I said, voice low but firm. "You broke everything, trust, family, everything, and Mark, you're his brother. That makes this even worse." Her eyes widened in shock. She stammered, "You can't be serious." "That's impossible." "Oh, it's very serious," I said. "And I already told him. Your little secret email, your flights, your plans, they're all in my hands now. He knows I'm onto him, and I told him I'd confront him tonight." Her face paled. "You're lying. This is all a mistake." "No," I said, voice hardening. "It's not. I've got the evidence, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows what you've done. Your plans to leave, your betrayal, you can't run from this." Her hands shook as she looked around, searching for some way out, but I'd made up my mind. I wasn't going to let her slip away again. I reached into my pocket, pulling out the evidence on my phone. "You can keep pretending, but I've already taken this to the next level. And Mark, he's about to learn some harsh truths." She stared at me, tears streaming down her face, and I saw the panic in her eyes. A part of me wanted to feel remorse, but honestly, I felt nothing but cold resolve. She had shattered my trust, betrayed me in ways I never thought possible. And now I was going to make sure she paid, one way or another. As she backed away, she whispered, "Please don't do this, not yet." "I already have," I said softly, "and this is just the beginning." I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there, trembling. I knew I had her right where I wanted her. Now I just had to wait for Mark to respond, and then the real game would start. I could feel the anticipation building. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming whatever shred of dignity I had left. The night was coming fast, and I was ready to face it. That night I sat alone in my apartment, the silence almost deafening. Every sound seemed amplified, the ticking of the clock, the distant hum of the city outside, my own shallow breathing. I kept staring at my phone, waiting for Mark's reply. The message I sent earlier had gone through, but I wasn't expecting him to respond right away. Still, the anticipation gnawed at me, like a rat gnawing on my nerves. My stomach was twisted into knots. I felt that familiar churn, a combination of rage, anticipation, and regret. I had thought I was prepared for everything, but the truth was, nothing could have prepared me for this. For discovering that the woman I loved, the woman I was supposed to marry, had been lying to me, sneaking around with my brother. That's a blow I knew would leave a mark. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. I snatched it up quickly. It was Mark. I hesitated for a second, then answered. "Hello," I said, voice even but simmering underneath. "Hey," he responded, his voice calm but edged with something I couldn't quite place. "I got your message. Look, I didn't mean for it to get this messy. I thought I was doing the right thing." "Stop," I cut him off sharply. "You're not going to justify this. I know everything, the flights, the plans, the email. We're not talking about some innocent mistake. You've been planning this just like her." There was a pause, then he exhaled. "Yeah, I guess I've been a fool, but I wasn't trying to hurt you. I thought I loved her." "That's bullshit," I snapped. "You're my brother, Mark, or at least I thought you were." Turns out I don't even know who either of you really are anymore." He was quiet for a moment. I could hear him shifting, almost as if he was trying to gather himself. "Look, I screwed up. I admit that, but I never wanted to hurt you. I was stupid. I let things get out of control." "Yeah," I said, voice cold and sharp. "You let them get out of control, and now I'm about to make sure you both pay for it." I told him about the evidence I had, about the emails, the flights, her plan to leave in a week. I warned him that I'd go public if I had to. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about justice. I wanted to see them squirm, to see them realize how badly they'd betrayed their family, their blood. "Don't do anything stupid," Mark said, voice strained. "I swear I didn't mean for it to come to this. I didn't think you'd find out." "I already did," I said flatly. "And I'm not about to let this slide. You're my brother, Mark. You should known better than to betray me like this." He was silent again, then finally said, "Look, I'll leave. I'll tell her to pack her things. Maybe we can fix this." "Fix it?" I scoffed. "There's no fixing this, not after everything I've uncovered. You'll both regret crossing me." I ended the call with a cold, "Don't come near me or my house again. And if I hear about you two trying to run, I'll make sure everyone knows what you've done." I slammed the phone down on the table, feeling my fists tense up. That's when I realized I'd done all I could in that moment, a kind of calm before the storm. But I knew I could stop there. I had to prepare for what was coming next. I had a plan, one that would make sure they understood the full weight of their betrayal. I'd arranged for someone to be waiting at the house, someone to record her packing up, to catch every word, every look. I wanted her to see that she was losing everything, just like she'd made me feel. As I looked out the window, watching the dark streets shimmer under the streetlights, I felt that strange mix of relief and dread. Relief that I'd finally confronted him. Dread that this wasn't over yet. The worst part, I knew that once she left, I'd lose her forever. Whether I wanted to admit it or not, I still loved her, but love doesn't mean much when trust is shattered. And so I waited, the cold night wrapping around me like a shroud. The plan was set in motion. I just needed her to make her move. When she walked out that door, I'd be ready. And once that happened, I'd finally take back control of my life. Because revenge isn't just about hurting someone. It's about reclaiming your dignity when everything's been stolen from you, and I was going to do just that. The day she packed her bags was colder than I expected. The air felt thick, almost suffocating, like the tension had seeped into every corner of the apartment. I watched her from the doorway, arms crossed, feeling every muscle tighten with anticipation and a strange sense of finality. She moved mechanically, packing hurriedly, her eyes red-rimmed but somehow empty. I could see the flicker of regret, or maybe just fear, dancing behind her eyes, but she said nothing. I had arranged for a friend to record it all, to catch her with her guard down. I wanted undeniable proof she was leaving, that she was walking away from everything, me, her lies, her life as she knew it. She didn't see me in the shadows, but I watched her every move, every trembling hand, every quiet sigh. It was almost too perfect. Finally, she looked up when she noticed I hadn't left. Her voice was barely a whisper. "You really going through with this?" I took a slow step forward, feeling the weight of everything she'd done settle heavy on my chest. "You've been lying to me for months," I said. "It's over, you're leaving just like you planned, but I want you to remember this moment." She backed away slightly, clutching her suitcase, eyes darting around like she was searching for an escape route. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she said softly. "I loved you. I was stupid. Please don't make this harder than it already is." I felt my jaw tighten. "You loved me. That's rich, coming from someone who was sneaking around with my brother, planning to run away with him. You think words can fix what you've broken?" Her shoulders sagged. "I was afraid. I thought I'd lose everything, and I made a mistake. I never wanted to hurt you." I shook my head slowly. "You didn't just hurt me, you tore apart a family. You lied about who you are, about who he is. That's a betrayal that can't be forgiven. And Mark, my brother, he's not just some guy. He's family, and he's supposed to be on my side." Her eyes flooded with tears, but I was past feeling sympathetic. All I could see was the damage she caused, the trust shattered into dust. I knew I should be angry, but at that moment what I felt was a strange emptiness, like all the love I'd had for her was draining out, leaving only a cold shell. "You gonna leave?" I asked, voice flat, almost mechanical. "Or do you want to say something before you go?" She hesitated, then finally whispered, "I'm sorry, I really am." That was the last thing she said before I nodded and turned away. I walked out of the apartment, closing the door behind me. It was the end of something that had once seemed unbreakable. I handed the recording to the friend waiting outside, then headed out into the night, feeling everything and nothing all at once. Walking down the street, I realized I'd taken back my control. She was gone, vanished into the night, just like the lies she'd told, and I was left standing there, battered but free. I knew it would take time to heal from this, maybe a long time. But one thing was certain. I had finally faced the truth, and I'd done what I needed to do. As I walked away, a strange sense of relief washed over me. Not because I'd won, not because I'd hurt her, though I did feel that satisfaction too. No, it was because I finally reclaimed my dignity. I had uncovered the lie, exposed the betrayal, and taken the necessary steps to walk away with what little self-respect I had left. Sometimes the only way to survive betrayal is to cut it out entirely, to burn everything to the ground and start anew. I did that, and now I'm just trying to rebuild. It's not easy, but it's honest, and that's all I need to keep going. The lesson: trust is fragile and betrayal cuts deep. But in the end, reclaiming your life is the most powerful revenge of all.